the means justifies the end. Have you ever thought about that? Or someone who will say, I don't believe in cheating. I mean, I saw this a lot in college. Most of the people, when we were in an ethics class, we were like, yeah, I don't believe in cheating. But I can tell you, I've seen some of the worst cheating in college that I've ever seen. Here, last quarter, I don't believe in cheating, but then they're cheating, and then they'll say, well, I'll lose my scholarship, or mom and dad won't pay for my BMW, or I didn't study last night, or whatever it may be. They'll always try to justify it. But what if you stop justifying wrongdoing, and you start just saying, you know what, I'm going to hold to my morals and my convictions, because this is what God says, and I'm just going to simply do what God tells me to do. Even when it's difficult, even when it causes me to be persecuted. You see, this is exactly what happened to Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. One of the things, when they're in the king's service, the king allotted to them some food from the king's table, which was a custom of the king to provide for his servants. But one of the things that they did was, Daniel and these three other guys looked and saw the food was not right for them to eat as Jews. Because during that time, they were living under the Mosaic law. And the Mosaic law had a lot to do with food. And obviously it was either food sacrificed to idols, or it was unclean animals from pigs, or it could be both. We don't quite exactly know. But regardless of the reason, they had the conviction to say, you know what? We're not going to eat that food because we're going to honor God. Now, how many of you would say, you know what? I've been through enough. I just lost my family. I lost my wealth. I lost my family. I lost my freedom. Let me have that ham sandwich. You know, a lot of us would say, you know, I suffered enough. But despite all of what they lost, they said, you know what? We're still going to please God regardless. We're going to hold to our convictions. And so Daniel goes up to the chief official of the servants and says, you know what? We can't eat this. Now test us for 10 days. Give us nothing but water and vegetables. And then compare us to the other young men who eat the royal food and see who's better. And then after 10 days, guess who was better? Daniel and the other three. And the amazing thing about this is the chief official changed his mind, and he gave all the servants vegetables and water. You know, all those guys hated Daniel and the other three for turning them into vegans, but that's what happened. But one of the things that we see here is look at how God blessed these four men. And how, because these were the people who were not going to base their faithfulness on circumstances, and they were not ones who were going to live life foregoing their convictions, God used them. And look at how he blessed them. In Daniel, the first chapter, verse 17 through 20, it says this. To these four young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. At the end of the time set by the king to bring them in, the chief official presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Those were their Jewish names. So they entered the king's service. In every matter of the wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom. And Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. Think about that. Here are guys who lost everything, held on to their convictions, and they were 10 times better than any of the wise men of Nebuchadnezzar. Did they have the ear of the king? Absolutely. Their morals, their convictions, their perseverance, and their commitment to God made them greater. It wasn't because they had wealth. It wasn't because they were better than everyone else. It was because they had that commitment, and because of that commitment, God especially endowed them with an opportunity to influence the king. That's an amazing thing about commitment. But another lesson that we learn is courage to commit is needed when sacrifice is required. You know, one of the things I can tell you is being a preacher is awfully hard. I actually got a source of encouragement the other week. I was reading a book, and Peter Drucker, who's one of the biggest management gurus, consultants for the business world, was asked, what is the hardest industry and what is the hardest job to do? And his answer was religion and being a minister. And his reasoning was, as a minister, you have to tell people to change their lives. And it has to be motivated by them to do it. And having that kind of leadership to cause that kind of change is difficult when you have no way to force them to do so. Not like you can in the business world. You know, one of the things that I have a hard time, and it causes me to be in tears all the time, is I love it when people come to Christ. They're the greatest moments. I love baptizing people and bringing them to Christ. But one of the things that hurts me the most is seeing people who forego their commitment to Christ and they leave Christ in this church. And it happens. And it happens a lot. It happened to Jesus. Jesus made known that everyone in the whole Judean countryside knew about John the Baptist, knew about Jesus, and knew about the apostles, and the whole Roman world knew about the church. Everyone knew about Christianity and Jesus. But despite that popularity, despite the healings of the multitudes, despite healing the thousands and preaching to the thousands, guess what happened? Very few chose to follow him despite that. Why does that happen? You see, one of the things that breaks my heart is, a lot of times you guys don't see it, but I spend a lot of time with people who I've brought to Christ or people who need spiritual encouragement. And I've given them counseling, and I've been there for them, have them over for holidays. I help them generously in other ways. And then to see them leave. And I'll go back to them and I'll say, why? After all of this, you say that you understood that Jesus is the Son of God. You understood that you were better when being part of the church. Why? And that's the time when they actually start getting honest. And they say, you know what? It's because I was willing to give up things. I was unwilling to give up drugs. Is a big one I hear. I'm unwilling to give up the person that I fell in love with, who God obviously wants me to be with, yet that person has no spiritual inclining. Another one, I have a hunger and a thirst for pornography, and no, I wouldn't give that up. I even had one person tell me that she refused to give up her romance novels because she enjoyed the smut. It's hard. Every day I just weep for these people thinking you're giving up commitment to God for the silliest things. And all because you won't sacrifice the things of this world that will perish with this world. You're giving up heaven. You're giving up eternal life. You're giving up friendship. You're giving up relationship. Maybe even they won't be willing to give up pride. I hear that a lot. Or see that a lot. Or they're unwilling to give up anger and bitterness that they held onto for so long. They won't give that up. But one of the things that I hear is commitment to God always requires sacrifice. What if sacrifice is something that you're struggling with? One of the things I learned about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we learned about these three guys specifically. In Daniel, the 3rd chapter, we hear that great story. No, it wasn't a chocolate bunny. It was a 90-foot statue. It was a 90-foot statue, and King Nebuchadnezzar had this rule saying, when you hear all the sounds, everyone turn to this statue, and you bow down and you worship it. Guess what these three men said? Ain't gonna do it. And here these guys are. They had everything now. You know what? They were promoted. They were top administrators in this foreign kingdom. They had the ear of the king. But when the other advisors of the king said, guess what? These three guys refused to listen to you. King Nebuchadnezzar got angry. And he got so angry that he was questioning them. And I want to read the response because this is one of the best responses in regards to God that I've ever seen. And when I actually struggle in ministry with just being down and such, I read this passage a lot. Because it shows me, you know what, my life is about God's glory. I want to be so committed to God that I realize God has a right to do whatever He wants, say whatever He wants. If He chooses not to do what I want, that's fine with me. I want to have the kind of level of commitment to Him that even if He won't commit to me in the way that I want, I will commit to Him. That's the kind of commitment I want all of us to have. That's the kind of commitment I'm trying to strive for. But this is what they say. This was their response to the king. In Daniel, the 3rd chapter, verse 16 through 18. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king.